Somebody's gotta say it. He lays down beats like Michael Jordan shoots free throws, effortlessly, flawlessly. But while I've been overseas, one thing's been on my mind, something heavy. Surgery. Is it a second chance, or a silent killer? So many walk into that cold, sterile room hoping for healing, only to never walk out again. And among those lost are legends. Icons. Black stars who once ruled the world. They had it all: money, fame, millions of adoring fans. But under the surgeon's knife, none of that could save them. What happened on that table? And why did so many never come back? In this video, we're uncovering the haunting stories of 15 famous black figures whose final moments were spent chasing hope and finding tragedy instead. Who were they? What really went wrong? Stick around. The truth may shock you. Donda West, the mother, the mentor, the backbone of Kanye West's rise to global stardom. She wasn't just the woman who raised him. She was his guiding light, his biggest believer, and the unwavering force behind his success. A respected English professor, Donda left behind a prestigious academic career to support her son's musical dreams full-time. Under her care and conviction, Kanye transformed from a hopeful beatmaker into one of the most influential artists in hip-hop history. But in a cruel twist of fate, just as Kanye reached the peak of his fame, the woman who made it all possible was suddenly gone, taken by one devastating decision. On November 9, 2007, Donda West walked into a cosmetic surgery clinic for what seemed like routine procedures, liposuction and a breast reduction. Nothing life-threatening. Nothing out of the ordinary. But behind the promise of beauty was a storm waiting to strike. The surgery lasted several hours. When it was done, there were no major red flags, except one. Instead of staying overnight for monitoring, she was sent home to recover alone. That choice proved fatal. Within hours, the signs appeared. Her breathing grew shallow. Her pulse, irregular. Her body weak. No machines. No doctor on standby. Just silence and suffering. As the night crept on, Donda's condition spiraled. The pain in her chest worsened. Every breath became a struggle. And then, on November 10th, her heart stopped. The autopsy would later list coronary artery disease and surgical complications as the cause of death. But no medical report can capture the heartbreak of a life lost too soon, or the regret that followed. The world was stunned. Kanye West was devastated. Days later, he stood before thousands, barely holding back tears as he performed "Hey Mama," a tribute that silenced the crowd and broke hearts across the globe. Donda West didn't just die from surgery, she died from a system that failed her. And in that loss, Kanye lost his center, his strength, and the one person who loved him unconditionally, no matter the spotlight. Stella Obasanjo, a first lady lost to the knife. Stella Obasanjo wasn't just the first lady of Nigeria, she was a national icon. Elegant, powerful, and poised, she carried herself with the kind of grace that commanded both respect and admiration. As the wife of President Olusegun Obasanjo, she stood beside one of Nigeria's most influential leaders, shaping the image of modern womanhood in West Africa. But in the blink of an eye, it all vanished, not from illness, not from violence, but from a tragic twist of fate inside a sterile operating room. On October 23, 2005, Stella entered a private clinic in Spain, seeking a routine cosmetic procedure, abdominal liposuction. A surgery so common, it's performed on millions every year. But for Stella, it would be her last. The operating room was quiet. The surgeon focused. The machines humming steadily. No alarms. No warning signs. But somewhere along the way, something went terribly wrong. Maybe it was a tiny internal rupture. Maybe a miscalculation by the surgeon. We'll never know the exact moment the tide turned. But what followed was chaos inside her body. Her circulation collapsed, her heart rate spiked, her breath grew shallow. One moment she was sedated. The next, she was slipping away. By the time doctors realized the gravity of the situation, it was too late. Stella Obasanjo was gone. Just like that, Nigeria's first lady, the wife of a sitting president, dead from a cosmetic procedure. The news sent shockwaves through the country. No one could believe it. Not the government. Not the public. Not her grieving husband. An official report confirmed what many feared: complications from the surgery had caused her death. The outrage was immediate. Nigerians demanded answers. The doctor was charged, but no verdict could undo what was done. Stella was gone. And the wound left behind was not just personal, it was national. President Obasanjo lost the love of his life. Nigeria lost a beloved first lady. And the world lost a woman of influence and grace. Her story remains a haunting reminder that in the pursuit of beauty, even the powerful are not immune to tragedy. Sometimes, the cost is far greater than anyone ever imagined. John Singleton, the heart surgery that stole a legend. John Singleton wasn't just a filmmaker, he was a force. The visionary mind behind Boys and the Hood, he shattered barriers as the youngest black director ever nominated for an Oscar. His films gave a voice to the voiceless and painted an unflinching portrait of life in America's inner cities. With new projects lined up and his star still burning bright, no one expected his story to end so soon. On April 17, 2019, Singleton checked into the hospital for what doctors called a critical, but manageable, heart surgery to repair a blood vessel issue. It was supposed to be routine, even hopeful. But that day marked the beginning of a devastating chain of events. The surgery dragged on for hours. Surgeons fought to stabilize his damaged vessels, and when it was all over, they announced success. He was moved to recovery, and for a moment, everyone exhaled. But behind the curtain of relief, disaster was quietly unfolding. His blood pressure spiked erratically. He complained of crushing headaches that left him struggling to breathe. The warning signs were there, but no one knew how quickly things would spiral. On April 25th, alarms pierced the quiet. Singleton had suffered a violent seizure. His heart pounded out of rhythm, his blood pressure surged to lethal levels, and then, silence. He was unresponsive. Rushed resuscitation efforts followed, but nothing worked. Singleton had slipped into a coma. His brain had suffered irreversible damage. 3 days later, on April 28 at 10:15 a.m., his family was faced with an unthinkable decision. Doctors told them there was no hope of recovery. With heavy hearts, they gave the order to withdraw life support. By 10:30 a.m., the heart that gave so much to cinema stopped beating. Hollywood was stunned. A trailblazer was gone. The projects he had been working on were left in limbo. Tributes poured in from Spike Lee, Ava DuVernay, Jordan Peele, and countless others, voices he helped uplift, mourning the one who first paved the way. And the cruelest irony? It all began with a surgery meant to save him. A choice that seemed right, but cost the world a legend. Patrice O'Neal, a life cut short by the fight to live. Patrice O'Neal wasn't just funny, he was fearless. A towering presence with razor-sharp wit, he didn't just crack jokes, he challenged minds. At 41, he was still climbing, still shaking up the world of comedy with raw truth and biting brilliance. But behind the laughter was a man in a silent battle with his own body. Weighing over 330 pounds, Patrice knew the risks: diabetes, high blood pressure, heart disease. So he made a choice many saw as brave. He underwent weight loss surgery, a procedure meant to save his life. But instead, it became the beginning of the end. Just months after the operation, on October 26, 2011, Patrice suffered a massive stroke. The very procedure that was supposed to give him more years had triggered a catastrophic chain of events. Blood clots, every post-op patient's nightmare, invaded his system. His brain was starved of oxygen. His body, already worn down, couldn't fight back. Doctors tried everything, but the damage was too deep. Patrice slipped into a coma and never woke up. On November 29, 2011, the world lost more than a comedian. It lost a truth-teller, a provocateur, a genius who could make you laugh while tearing apart everything you thought you knew. His death shook the comedy community to its core. How could a decision meant to heal turn so deadly? Did anyone truly prepare him for the risks? We may never know the full story. But one thing is heartbreakingly clear. In trying to save his future, Patrice O'Neal unknowingly signed off on his final act. And with his passing, American comedy lost one of its boldest, brightest flames. Sean Rooks, the giant who couldn't beat his final battle. Sean Rooks was more than just a name on an NBA roster. He was a force. A towering 6 feet 10 inches warrior with a relentless playing style, he battled night after night on the hardwood, earning respect across the league. After his playing days ended, he didn't walk away from the game he loved. Instead, he turned to coaching, dedicating his life to guiding the next generation of talent. At 46, a promising new chapter was just beginning. But fate had other plans. On June 7, 2016, just moments after what was deemed a successful heart surgery, Sean Rooks died. The heart that had pushed through countless games, years of training, injuries, and competition gave out in silence. His true enemy wasn't another player. It wasn't the grueling pace of professional basketball. It was something far more quiet and far more dangerous: coronary artery disease. Like many retired athletes, Sean carried the burden of a body worn down by years of performance. His large frame, once a symbol of dominance, had become a hidden risk. Doctors warned him. Without surgery, the consequences would be severe. Sean accepted the challenge, believing this procedure was just another hurdle to clear, not a life-ending one. The surgery went smoothly. His arteries were repaired. He came out of the operating room stable. For a brief moment, everyone exhaled. It looked like he had made it. But then, without warning, his heart simply stopped. No pain. No goodbye. Just a sudden, deafening silence. Doctors did everything. Alarms blared. Hands moved quickly. But the heart that had fueled so many victories had nothing left to give. It had already fought its final battle. Sean Rooks passed away just minutes after the operation. The sports world was stunned. How could someone so strong, so full of life, be gone just like that? His death was a chilling reminder that strength doesn't always mean invincibility, and that even giants can fall quietly when no one expects it. Sean Rooks left behind a legacy of grit, passion, and leadership. But he also left us with a painful truth. Sometimes, the fiercest battles are the ones we never see coming. Bernie Mac, the roar of laughter silenced in a hospital room. He was more than a comedian. Bernie Mac was a force of nature. That gritty voice, that bold delivery, that fearless humor. He didn't just make people laugh, he made them feel alive. Whether on stage or lighting up the big screen, Bernie had a presence you couldn't ignore. At 50, he was still climbing, still killing it, still making millions laugh. And then, everything stopped. August 9, 2008. What was supposed to be a routine lung surgery turned into a tragedy no one saw coming. Bernie had been battling sarcoidosis, a rare disease that scars the lungs and slowly steals your breath. His whole career was built on that voice, that breath, that fire. But now, his breath had become his greatest battle. Doctors believed surgery could save him, cut away the damaged parts, give him a second wind. Bernie believed them. He walked into that operating room expecting to come out swinging. But fate had other plans. In a cold, sterile room, surrounded by machines and silence, the man who once rocked arenas lay motionless under the lights. The scalpel moved with precision. The surgery was declared a success. Bernie was wheeled into recovery. Everyone exhaled. But the danger hadn't passed, it was only just beginning. His immune system, already weakened by years of disease, couldn't hold the line. Then came pneumonia, sudden, savage, and unforgiving. His breathing turned into a struggle. Fever spiked. His body trembled with every cough. The man who once stood tall with unshakable confidence was now fighting for every breath. For 3 agonizing weeks, Bernie Mac battled complications. And then, quietly, his heart gave out. The world lost a giant that day. A king of comedy. A Chicago legend. Gone too soon, leaving behind a deafening silence where laughter used to live. Was the surgery the right choice? Could something have been done differently? We may never know. But what we do know is this: Bernie Mac's voice may be gone, but his laughter will live forever. In every joke. In every memory. In every soul he ever made smile. Yolanda King, the heart of a warrior silenced too soon. Yolanda King wasn't just Martin Luther King Jr.'s daughter, she was the living pulse of his dream. A fierce advocate, commanding speaker, and unshakable force for justice, she carried the weight of her father's legacy with dignity and fire. At 51, she still stood on stages across the country, urging crowds to believe in equality, to keep pushing forward. But behind her powerful presence, her own heart was quietly struggling. For years, Yolanda lived with a silent enemy, an undiagnosed leaky heart valve. She felt the fatigue, the uneven rhythms, the whispers of something wrong. But she kept going. She had to. The movement didn't pause, so neither did she. But even the strongest warriors have limits. Doctors finally gave her one option: surgery. A chance to fix the valve and extend her life. Yolanda didn't hesitate. She walked into that operating room with courage, like a soldier heading into battle, believing she'd come out stronger. And for a moment, it seemed she would. The operation went smoothly. The heart was repaired. The monitors calmed. Her doctors exhaled, hopeful. But hope can be deceiving. In the quiet hours after surgery, Yolanda's body began to fail. Her heart, newly mended, couldn't find its rhythm. Her vitals slipped. The alarm screamed. Doctors raced to bring her back, but the fight was already lost. In the stillness of May 15, 2007, Yolanda King's heart beat for the last time. She left without warning. No farewell, no final speech, just a deafening silence where her voice used to rise. Another light in the King legacy, gone too soon. Her fight was unfinished. Her father's dream, still incomplete. But here's the truth: death may still the heart, but it cannot silence a spirit. Yolanda's voice still echoes in the struggle. Her passion fuels every step toward justice. And though she is no longer here, what she stood for lives on. In marches, in voices, in every soul that refuses to give up. Yolanda King may be gone, but the dream she carried burns brighter than ever. Florence Griffith Joyner, the queen of speed, the woman who turned tracks into runways, died quietly in her sleep. It was September 21, 1998, when the world awoke to a headline that stopped hearts. FloJo, the fastest woman alive, was gone. An icon of grace and power, whose blistering strides once shattered world records, had left us without warning. But her death wasn't just sudden, it was layered in mystery. For years, Florence had been battling a silent, relentless enemy: seizures. They stalked her like a shadow, striking without mercy. While eating, while talking, even while running. Imagine that: an Olympic champion who could control every inch of her body on the track, yet couldn't control her own brain. She was determined to fight back. Her weapon? Brain surgery. A high-stakes gamble. A final shot at freedom. There were no cameras, no medals, no roaring crowds. Only surgeons, scalpels, and hope. The procedure went well, or so it seemed. FloJo walked out of the operating room stable, strong, and ready to reclaim her life. But beneath the surface, the danger hadn't vanished. It had only shifted. The seizures returned, sneakier than before. And they waited until she was most vulnerable. That night, as she lay peacefully in bed, one final seizure struck. What happened in that dark, quiet room, no one really knows. All we do know is this: when morning came, the woman who once outran time itself never opened her eyes again. Phyllis Hyman, a jazz legend lost to the pursuit of perfection. With a voice like velvet and a presence that commanded the stage, Phyllis Hyman was one of the greatest R&B and jazz vocalists of her time. Her deep, husky tone could stir souls, but behind that powerhouse voice was a woman quietly unraveling. Beneath the glamour and applause, Phyllis battled deep insecurities about her appearance. In an industry obsessed with youth and beauty, she felt the pressure to keep up, no matter the cost. So she turned to cosmetic surgery, hoping it would help her hold onto the magic. But what she thought would be a confidence boost became something far more devastating. After undergoing breast augmentation, her body healed, but her mind did not. What followed was a spiral of confusion, fear, and emotional chaos. Phyllis had long struggled with bipolar disorder and depression, diagnoses that haunted her since the 80s. She often tried to numb the pain with alcohol and drugs. But after surgery, when she looked in the mirror and saw someone she didn't recognize, her mental state collapsed. The perfection she had chased became a cruel mirage, one that deepened her despair instead of silencing it. And even the strongest spirits have breaking points. On June 30th, 1995, just hours before she was set to perform at her own 46th birthday celebration, Phyllis locked her apartment door for the last time. When they found her, it was already too late. A brief suicide note lay beside her. The voice that once lit up rooms was gone. They say it was depression that took her, and the emotional fallout of the surgery was the final blow. Her tragic end wasn't just a loss for music, it was a haunting reminder of the brutal pressure artists face to stay flawless in a world that often cares more about image than soul. Dave Durson, a legend lost to the game he loved. Dave Durson was once a titan on the football field, two-time Super Bowl champion, feared defender, and a name etched in NFL history. But behind the helmet, something far more tragic was unfolding. Years of brutal hits had left invisible wounds deep within his brain. Hoping for a cure, Durson underwent brain surgery, a desperate attempt to reclaim his life. No one knew it would only hasten his fall. On February 17, 2011, Durson was found dead in his Florida apartment, a single gunshot wound marking the end. But this wasn't a sudden act. It was the final chapter in a slow, painful descent. In his final moments, he left behind a chilling note: "Please, donate my brain to science." What many didn't know was the silent torment Durson had endured in his final years. Crippling headaches, sleepless nights, dark waves of depression. The hits he took on the field hadn't just scarred his body, they were slowly erasing his mind. He was unraveling from the inside out. After surgery failed to ease the agony, things only grew worse. The man who once dominated the gridiron could no longer recognize himself. His mind turned into a battlefield, fragmented memories, sudden paranoia, and an overwhelming sense of dread. Those closest to him watched in helpless silence as he withdrew from the world, his once vibrant spirit fading into shadows. Then came the final decision. No goodbyes, no fanfare, just a single plea: study my brain. And when doctors did, they discovered the terrifying truth. Durson had been suffering from CTE, chronic traumatic encephalopathy, a degenerative brain disease caused by repeated head trauma. It explained the paranoia, the depression, the unraveling. But it also raised one haunting question: did the surgery push him over the edge? Or was it simply the last tragic detour in a long, desperate search for peace? Reggie White, the legend who lost his final battle off the field. Reggie White wasn't just a football player, he was a force of nature. A towering figure in the NFL, a Hall of Famer, a man whose presence alone sent shivers down the spine of any quarterback. He was one of the greatest defensive players to ever step onto the gridiron. But in the end, it wasn't a brutal hit or a career-ending injury that brought him down. It was something far more silent and far more tragic. December 26, 2004, a day that shook the football world. That morning, Reggie White collapsed inside his own home. No warning, no time to react. Medics rushed in, but it was already too late. Just like that, he was gone, only 43 years old. The official cause: cardiac arrest. But behind that diagnosis was a deeper, more haunting truth. For years, Reggie had been battling sleep apnea, a dangerous condition that robs the body of oxygen and slowly breaks it down. He often woke up gasping for air, exhausted despite hours of rest. Determined not to let it rule his life, Reggie chose to undergo surgery to widen his airway, a decision made with hope, not fear. The surgery seemed to go smoothly. But soon after, something changed. Reggie felt weaker, more fatigued. His heartbeat grew irregular. His body, once a symbol of strength, began to fade. On that cold December morning, his heart simply gave out. Doctors now believe the very surgery that was meant to save him may have triggered the fatal cardiac arrest. A warrior who had conquered every field he stepped on, lost his final fight in the one place no one expected, the operating room. Reggie White didn't fall in battle under stadium lights. He fell in silence, betrayed by the very solution he trusted to heal him. His death was a cruel twist of fate, a reminder that even legends are vulnerable. And sometimes, the greatest battles are the ones we fight when no one is watching. Moses Malone, the silent fall of a giant. Moses Malone wasn't just a basketball legend. He was the king of rebounds, the quiet force who carried the Philadelphia 76ers to their 1983 championship glory. A Hall of Famer, a trailblazer, a warrior on the court. But off the court, his final chapter ended not with fanfare, but in silence. On September 13, 2015, Malone was in Virginia, preparing for a charity golf event. Just another day in retirement for a man beloved by generations. But by morning he was gone. Found lifeless in his hotel room. His heart had simply stopped. The official cause, cardiac arrhythmia. But the truth runs deeper. Just weeks earlier, Malone had undergone heart surgery, routine by today's standards. Doctors discovered blocked coronary arteries and recommended a stent to prevent a future stroke. The procedure went smoothly. No complications. They told him he'd feel better, stronger. But Moses knew something wasn't right. His heartbeat felt strange. His energy never fully returned. But in true Malone fashion, he pushed through. This was the same man who played through pain, who never backed down from a challenge. A little fatigue? He thought he could handle it. He couldn't. That morning his body finally gave out. There were no alarms, no cries for help, just a deadly silence in that hotel room. No one could save him. Not the doctors. Not the game he gave everything to. Moses Malone didn't die on the court, but he died a fighter. Ironically, it was a decision meant to save his life that quietly stole it. A tragic end to a towering legacy. A gamble taken, and everything lost. Daryl Dawkins, Chocolate Thunder, was larger than life, but even legends can fall. He wasn't just a basketball player. He was a force of nature. A backboard-breaking phenom who brought style, power, and pure attitude to the game. The first man to slam so hard, the NBA had to rewrite its rulebook. His dunks weren't just plays, they were shockwaves. But even the strongest storm can be undone by a silent threat. That threat was his heart. For years, Dawkins had battled a dangerous heart condition. The wear and tear of a career built on brute force and showmanship had taken its toll. Doctors warned him, his arteries were dangerously blocked. Without surgery, a stroke could strike without warning. Still, Dawkins, the eternal fighter, believed he could power through. He defied limits before. Why not one more time? So he put his faith in the scalpel. The surgery was supposed to save him. It went smoothly. No complications, no alarms. Everyone thought he'd bounce back. But Dawkins felt something off. The fatigue lingered. The energy never came back. But he brushed it off. He was Chocolate Thunder. Pain was just background noise. Until it wasn't. On the morning of August 27, 2015, Daryl Dawkins woke up like any other day. He got out of bed, and that's when it hit. A crushing wave of pain. His heart, the same heart they thought they'd fixed, gave out. Acute heart failure struck without mercy. There was no time to respond. No second chance. In an instant, the man who shattered glass ceilings, literally and figuratively, was gone. Not from a dunk or a fall, but from something no one could see coming. And what hurts most? It might have been preventable. Daryl Dawkins left behind a legacy etched in broken backboards and unforgettable flair. But in the end, it was his heart, the very thing that made him unstoppable, that betrayed him. Kim Porter thought she was in the clear. The surgery was behind her, and for the first time in a while, she could breathe easy, literally. A model, actress, and the woman who stood by Sean Diddy Combs through fame and fire, Kim wasn't just a pretty face. She was a force, graceful, driven, and unforgettable. From red carpets to magazine covers, her life sparkled. But behind the glow, a quiet storm had been brewing for years. Kim had battled a chronic lung condition in silence, nagging coughs, fatigue that never let up, breaths that came harder with time. Still, she smiled, posed, worked, mothered, and never let the world see her pain. Doctors warned her, without aggressive treatment, her condition could turn deadly. So, she chose surgery, a risky but hopeful step toward healing. At first, it seemed like she'd made it. The operation was a success, and Kim came out stronger, lighter, ready to reclaim her life. She walked, laughed, kept up appearances, thinking the worst was over. But then the cough returned. Subtle at first. Then stronger. The fatigue crept back in, but Kim brushed it off, chalking it up to recovery. What she didn't know was that pneumonia, a silent killer, was already spreading through her lungs. Days later, it overwhelmed her. Her body, weakened and unaware, couldn't fight it off. On the morning of November 15, 2018, Kim Porter was found unresponsive in her Los Angeles home. It was too late. The vibrant light who lit up every room was gone. The official cause? Lobar pneumonia brought on by post-surgical complications. But for those who loved her, it wasn't just a medical tragedy. It was a heartbreaking loss of a woman who seemed unstoppable until the very end. Earl Morrall, a football legend brought down not by a rival team, but by a surgery meant to save his life. His name is forever etched in NFL glory. Earl Morrall wasn't just a great quarterback, he was the man who helped steer the Miami Dolphins through their iconic undefeated season in 1972. On the field, he faced every blitz, every tackle, every fourth down with unwavering grit. But his most devastating opponent didn't wear a helmet. It was a silent killer growing inside his head, a brain tumor. At 79, Morrall was still sharp, still spirited. But then came the dizzy spells. The headaches. Subtle at first, then impossible to ignore. The diagnosis hit hard, a tumor deep in his brain. The doctors gave him a choice, though it wasn't really a choice at all: undergo risky surgery or wait for the inevitable. He chose to fight. He always did. The operation was long, delicate. When it ended, there was hope. He was alive. Breathing. Conscious. But what looked like a victory was just the start of a slow, tragic unraveling. Days later, his condition worsened. His immune system collapsed. His organs followed: heart, kidneys, lungs. One by one they gave out. The same body that once bulldozed defenders couldn't even fight to take a breath. On April 25, 2014, Earl Morrall passed away. The surgery meant to save his life had instead stolen it. The undefeated champion of 1972 lost his final game, not to time, not to age, but to the scalpel. 15 legendary names. 15 surgeries that were supposed to be their salvation. But instead, they became the beginning of the end. Do you believe these tragic endings could have been avoided? Or were they simply fated to fall this way? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. And if this story moved you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that bell, because the next episode dives even deeper into the untold truths behind Hollywood's black icons.